You don't know the power of the dark side.
Welcome to Star Wars Chatter, hosted by Andor EP.41. Now you're listening to Power. The information on this podcast is my opinion and some internet research. Hello and welcome to the Star Wars Chatter. I'm Andor EP.11, and this is your safe space to discuss Star Wars. Let's talk about that episode 11 of Andor. But before, a word from our sponsor. The sponsor of my stream and podcast is DistroKid. If you want 7% off on your first subscription with DistroKid, release your music to the world on every major music platform. Make sure to go to my website, andorvanzark.com, and click on the discount link under the tab of DistroKid. Now that you're refreshed on the word of the sponsor, let's dive in. And before we dive in, actually, let me cue the spoiler alert. This is a spoiler warning.
Well, I didn't see that coming.
If you don't like spoilers, make sure to tune out.
Please hang up and try again.
But if you know what we're talking about, make sure to leave me a message on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or tune into my next live show at twitch.tv/AndorVanZark and leave me a message there on the chat. So let's get started and listen at your own risk. Now, if you've watched it, like the spoiler alert says, you can continue listening to my podcast right here on Star Wars Chatter, your safe space to discuss Star Wars. People are on the move on Andor, and after several episodes of Casey being stuck in prison and Luthen hanging out at his antique shop, the name of the game is Movement. Izian and Melchi's finally escaped Narkina 5, which I was waiting for that since quite some time, while Luthen sips all around the galaxy. But at the same time, it's clear Andor isn't going to make any last-minute status quo-shattering plot changes. The lineup for the final episodes of the game has been called, and everything you need to know about the Season 1 finale has been already set up until this point. And I do think that Star Wars Andor has been doing a great, phenomenal stuff of building up the rebellion, telling us what Cassian Andor is up to and what he did before Rogue One, because most of us did not know who Cassian was. Actually, no one knew who the hell Cassian was. And having this mini-series here that is going to extend to more seasons, as some articles stated on StarWars.com, it's interesting how they're fleshing out this character, how they're giving us more information, and how we're learning about how the rebellion actually happened. Because as far as we are concerned, we've always had the story right there when the rebellion is about to attack the Empire, but we've never seen before. We did see the Empire build up and whatnot, but not the rebellion is always shown all fleshed out. And that is something that I've always wanted to delve into, because I've actually had a little bit of that experience within the books, the comics and whatnot, but those are extended universe or legends as they like to call it now. So one of the things that Andor may be remembered for, at least in retrospect, is that the series doesn't lean on mysterious boxes or massive plot twist to keep folks engaged. Yes, One Way Out, that episode was amazing though, gave us the identity of an ISB agent who is really a rebel spy. That was a little bit of a plot twist, and I wasn't expecting that. It left my jaw dropped and open, but it's awesome nonetheless. But in Daughter of Ferrix, whatever Loney, aka Robert Ems, the actor, is doing isn't that concerning. Luthen preserved the status quo by keeping his informant in place. What this episode does instead is delve deeper into Luthen's decisions, taking it to a very real and painful place. It's letting Anton Krieger's men die the right thing to do for the larger rebellion? You might be asking yourself. I don't know. Seems sketchy for me. But it might do something in the long run. Even Saw Gerrera, a freedom fighter who is labeled as an extremist by the other rebels, seems uneasy with Luthen's cold-blooded methods. So it's interesting the morality play in the show, and the Luthen we see in this episode isn't as sure of his cold spy master's decision as the guy we saw last week, yelling at poor Loney to shut up and take it. With all of his rebel spies underlings he is aloof and angry, but with Saw, Luthen is honest and conflicted. It's a convincing portrait of an isolated leader, especially when he generally asks Saw, do we let Krager go down and play the long game? Stellan Skarsgård acts the hell out of these scenes, layering on even more complexity to an already very complicated character. Needless to say, watching this master of the craft do his thing has been one of the show's major highlights, if I might say. But just because all these performances and chess moves are interesting, that doesn't mean the audience will feel good about Saw and Luthen ultimately agreeing to let Krager take one for the team. And we're not meant to feel good about it though. With this gripping conversation between Luthen and Saw, Andor has once again made one of its favorite points. The good guys in the rebellions aren't always good. I don't know. In this series, they're presenting them as either way. So, the rebellion, is it really a good group of people or is it a bad group of people? In most cases, government would seize and deem rebellion. But we all know that in Star Wars, rebellion actually means fighting for what's right, doing what the people want, getting there, and moving on with the oppression and swiping it out. It's like comparing to Robin Hood. He did wrong based on the people in charge, but for his village, he did what was right, and the people cheered on and said, "Hooray for Robin Hood!" So in Star Wars realm and universe, yes, rebellion is good, and we need it. So it's weird how pivotal Krager is, considering we've never met the character at all. This idea that Luthen and his people are planning to kill Cassian for essentially the same reason that Luthen is letting Krager die is philosophical math. You have to do in your head to get all those points connected. But there's incongruity there because we don't know anything about Krager other than he's another freedom fighter that Saw doesn't like. But that everyone agrees is basically on the side of the rebels. The ethical dilemma that Luthen presents to Saw feels similar to something from a John Lee Carey novel like Tinker Tailor's Soldier Spies, as quoting here from Den of Geek. So the difference is in those books, when harsh decisions are made, the reader tends to have an idea of the fictional biographies of the people involved. Andor will likely defend the choice of not allowing the audience to meet Krager. A hologram doesn't count. As one more reason, the show is brilliant, if I might say, and proof that writer Tony Guillory is revolutionary who doesn't play by the rules, as most might say. But the truth is, everyone about this scene with Saw and Luthen would have been better and more impactful if we'd already met Krager even once. And I do want to meet Krager because Krager is a character that's actually playing a big role and a big point within this episode. He's mentioned when Bix was interrogated, and he's also mentioned when Saw and Luthen are discussing and talking and going in between with the exchange of words. So, meanwhile, Cassian and Melchi's trip back to the paradise planet of Niamos isn't nearly as tricky as you might think. Friendly aliens conveniently agree to take them on their ship. And then suddenly Cassian is back in that, hotel? Room? I don't know. He was in 4 episodes ago, conveniently finding a box of stuff he stashed there. And that place we're talking about is that place where he was actually caught and sentenced to prison for 6 years. So this allows the plot to resume basically where it was before he was imprisoned, like I said. Why was it so easy for Melchi and Cassian to walk around Niamos, a place that's supposed to be crawling with Imperials who have arrested people? Really? I don't know. That's kind of interesting if I might ask myself. So how come nobody cleaned out the stash of stuff in Casian's room? Even though there was someone clearly sleeping under his bed on that place. So this mini arc with Kino was kind of thrilling and effectively horrifying. When they had to jump on one way out from the prison to the water, it was kind of like a plot twist, if I might say, or kind of weird that Kino couldn't swim. So I'm asking myself, what is Kino up to now? Was Kino decided to go back inside prison or something? I don't know. It feels weird. It feels very weird what Kino might be doing, and that little switch up that he can't swim and he couldn't follow with Andor, even though Andor was the one who gave him the power, the will to do what he had to do. It really makes you wonder if that storyline was designed to be self-contained. Yes, the experiences on Narkina 5 have changed Casian, but it doesn't feel like he's really made any decision other than to react to whatever each episode throws at him. What happened to this guy searching for his sister? He did change. Even though Marva tells him that there's no sister to not survive, he was still trying to get his old ways fulfilled on his own story. So Marva's off-screen death will undoubtedly pull Casian back to Ferrix, where all the other parties will also coverage for the season's finale showdown, which is next week. And I was asking myself, how does all this connect to Rogue One? Yeah, I know they're going to do a season 2, and they're going to connect it to Rogue One eventually, but I don't know how this all connects, because we all know that in Rogue One, Bix and Casian are together. So how are they together if he wanted to leave Ferrix? No one really knows what Casian's up to. And Casian is just somewhere far away with his own ways. He's always moving around. But like I always say, Casian Andor always knows what he has to do in order to continue his story or life or whatever you want to call it. So later on in the episode, you can see that B2MO, when he finds out that Marva had died and whatnot, he was so devastated. He was sad. He didn't want it to move away from the little apartment where Marva lived. And I don't know what would have happened if Casian Andor would have sticked with Marva and stayed on Ferrix, even though he shouldn't be on Ferrix because he was really looked for, or either way, the other way around. Marva moving with Casian somewhere else. I don't know, things are really questionable at this point, but like we all know, Rogue One has to happen, so Marva at some shape or form was gonna be out of the story. And how did he do it? By killing her, unfortunately. And we had this thing coming from the previous episode. Marva was having some problems, and Cinta was saying that they already caught her trying to open a secret place for the rebellion to sneak in from, and she slipped and hurt herself really badly. We also hear that Cinta says that she wasn't taking her medicines and whatnot and was hiding it on purpose. So we were actually foreshadowing her death. So in many ways, that is something that we had to expect. So one good thing of this episode that I really liked is that it went back to the old self of Star Wars. And what you might be asking yourself, what is old style of Star Wars? Lightsabers? No. The first thing that actually caught my attention from Star Wars was actually seeing Luke Skywalker on an X-Wing blasting Death Star. And that was the first time I actually saw Star Wars with different eyes. And I was like, wow, this is great. I gotta keep watching some more. Before that, I was like, it's good. I love this. But it wasn't until that point where I saw those X-Wings and the TIE fighters exploding and whatnot. It's when I really got into Star Wars. Even though I do love that iconic scene of Darth Vader saying, I am your father. So, yeah. Anyways. So this episode actually goes back to that style of Star Wars, retro looking. The way that the Imperial ship gets attacked by Luthen, it's a really interesting one. And then we see the TIE fighters fly in. It brings us to classic Star Wars. We were expecting some of that around these parts and around these areas of Star Wars Andor, but sometimes you do have to change up the style a little bit to keep things fresh, keep things interesting. Just the same way they did with Mandalorian. Mandalorian felt completely Western. And if I might say myself, you could literally take out the armor from the Mandalorian, put a cowboy hat. It's literally a Western film. Same thing with Book of Boba Fett when he was in the desert with the Tusken Raiders and whatnot. It felt like that Western feel. But anyways, this episode of Star Wars Andor is actually closing up the series next week. We're going to have the last episode of Star Wars Andor. I'm glad that it's coming to an end, even though we're going to have season 2. But I really love this show, and I don't know why people are saying this show is boring, slow, sloppy. I'm like, no, it's not slow, boring, and sloppy. It's just character development. When you watch any show, like an anime or something that has a lot of character development, it is going to be a little slow. And I'm used to it because I watch a lot of mecha animes, and mecha animes tend to be slow, tend to be building up the characters. Why are they building these robots? Why are there's destruction and war happening between different species and stuff like that? And I'm used to character development. So most people, when they see character development on a show, it's, this is boring, this is bad. And I'm like, no, not at all. If you see the new Black Panther, it's completely character development the whole way through. And that is amazing. Sure, it does have a lot of action, but it's character development at its finest. And I love character development, and no one can change my mind. No one can. So anyways, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. This was Andor Van Zark on the Star Wars Chatter. Don't forget to follow me on every social network as Andor Van Zark and catch this episodes of my podcast once a week. And yeah, have some fun. May the Force be with you. And I'll catch you on the flip side. Adios, amigos. This was the Star Wars Chatter, hosted by Andor Van Zark. If you have any thoughts or any message that you want to leave me, go check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or my website, www.andorvanzark.com. And I'll catch you on the flip side. Sayonara. When you listen to Andor Van Zark, you listen with power. Now you're listening with power. Andor Van Zark. Stream on every major music platform. Power to the music.